Barcelona is the greatest city on earth. But don't just take my word for it. I'm super biased. The Telegraph published an article and named Barcelona the greatest city on earth. And that's according to science. A couple weeks ago, the Telegraph published an article, and of the 50 cities that were eligible, Barcelona took that #1 spot for greatest city on earth. In this video, we're gonna take a look at the methodology that they used to find out why Barcelona was ranked #1, and obviously, why wouldn't it be, but also to let you know what you can take advantage of while you're here. The travel experts over at the Telegraph rated these 50 cities on a variety of topics, from food and cultural offerings to safety and livable space. Barcelona came in #1 with a total of 588 points out of a possible 810, beating out Sydney, which came in second place, by 32 points. One of the things that allowed Barcelona to rate so well amongst voters is that it came in the top 20 in almost every single category. And one of the little side wins that didn't play into the vote at all is that it came ahead of Madrid and Seville, which are the only two other cities in all of Spain that made it into the top 50. The first category that they rated was the number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites found in each city. What's really interesting is that in the description, they were giving out different points where the sites of Gaudi all count as 1, which we'll explain in just a minute. But in a city like Rome that has UNESCO World Heritage City status, that was going to get 3 points. Barcelona as a whole has basically 3 different sites: the works of Gaudi, the Catalan Music Palace, and the Hospital of St. Paul. What's really interesting about Gaudi's works is that back when UNESCO gave them World Heritage status, it wasn't on an individual basis. It's basically the entire grouping of the Gaudi buildings that are in Barcelona. But it's not every single one of them, and it's not the whole building every single time. There's actually 7 different Gaudi buildings in Barcelona that are given that UNESCO World Heritage status in that group: the Parc Güell, the Palau Güell, the Casa Milà, the Casa Batlló, the Casa Vicens, the crypt, and the Nativity Facade for the Sagrada Familia. Really important to note that it's just the part that Gaudi built. Everything that was built after his death in 1926 isn't included as part of that UNESCO World Heritage Site. The other building is just outside of Barcelona, and it's the crypt of the Colonia Güell. There's actually a church that he made just outside of Barcelona that he also didn't finish that's included in that grouping of 7 as well. Now, if you tally that up, Barcelona is going to have 9 different sites that are going to be included in that UNESCO World Heritage status. Spain as a whole, you've got 48 different sites, some of them being buildings, some of them being entire cities. In fact, in Spain, 15 different cities have been designated as UNESCO World Heritage Sites themselves. One of them being just an hour outside of Barcelona, and that's Tarragona. The second category was the number of Michelin star restaurants per capita. In Spain as a whole, there's 226 Michelin-starred restaurants. 19 of them are in Barcelona. Now, if you've ever been to Barcelona, you know that you don't have to eat at one of those Michelin star restaurants to get an amazing gastronomical experience. But if you are in the city, know that there are 11 one-star restaurants, 6 two-star restaurants, and 2 3-star restaurants right in the city. The last one that I went to was La Sarte, and La Sarte is a 3-star restaurant just off of the Passeig de Gràcia, which was a completely different experience that I'd always recommend. The distance from the city center to the closest airport was also something that was taken into account. And in Barcelona, you've got El Prat Airport, which is just 7.1 miles outside of that city center. If you do have a flight out of Barcelona, keep in mind that it's only going to take about 30 minutes from the very center of the city to get over to that airport. You've got all sorts of different transportation options like taxis, buses, metros, trains, and even my preferred way to get from the Plaça Catalunya, right in the center of Barcelona, over to the airport, the Aerobús. Another category, and I don't have specific numbers about it, is the clear air ranking according to the CDP Environmental Performance Index, where Barcelona scored an A. There's a whole list of criteria for each of those organizations to be given that A ranking, which includes lowering emissions, making real progress towards the goals, and even having a plan for climate change. And the City Hall of Barcelona has definitely been doing that. In fact, if you come to the city these days, you're going to notice there's a lot of construction. One of the big things that they're trying to do is limit the number of cars moving around in the city. A lot of those emissions coming from those cars being reduced reducing the amount of cars on the streets and even closing some of those streets down altogether. Right now, the biggest plan has to be the different super blocks that they're creating where cars won't be able to travel down specific roads that'll be made basically for pedestrians and bringing green spaces back to the center of the city. There's also a sustainability plan for what Barcelona will look like in the year 2030. Believe it or not, the largest park in the city is actually a category where Barcelona got knocked down on. Many of you will already know about the Park Güell, its most famous and definitely biggest tourist attraction in terms of a park, but the biggest park in Barcelona is Ciutadella. This is the park that's just outside of the city center. It used to be an old fortress, hence its name, and it's got quite a bit of space. Now, one thing about Barcelona is that it does have all sorts of different parks for that green space spread out throughout the city, but the biggest thing is that it has this huge beachfront where most people are going to go to hang out. Another category they used in ranking these cities was the oldest existing building. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, this is probably something I should know, but I'm not even sure what they used as the oldest existing building in Barcelona. If you go over to that Gothic quarter, that's where you're going to find some of the oldest buildings in the city. The article did remark about the 12th century Jewish quarter, which is very, very well preserved, but I'm not sure that they were talking about that specifically in terms of using that as a building. What you do have around in that Gothic quarter are some Roman bits of the city where you've got some of the architecture, some of the walls that are left that are almost 2,000 years old. You've also got a cathedral from the end of that 13th century as well. In a city that's really well known for incredible architecture, trust me, you won't lack for finding beautiful buildings. The number of 5-star hotels per capita is another category that got Barcelona ranked #1, and with 39 different 5-star hotels all throughout the city, you've got your pick of the litter. One of the best things that I've found about these hotels is that they're spread out but still well connected to different parts of the city. You've got some of those 5-star hotels on the beach, some of them right along the Passeig de Gràcia amongst those modernist houses, and some of them even have been turned into hotels from those modernist houses. So you can stay inside some of those historical buildings and have that special access. Another great thing about those options is that you usually have some rooftop access to get some incredible views of the city as well. One of the questions I get quite often is where can I get the best views of Barcelona? And with Barcelona's setup right on the beach, but also with the mountains behind, you've got all sorts of different hills and vantage points that'll help you take advantage and see the city. Montjuïc gives you some incredible options looking in from the sea to the center of the city, but you can also get out to places like the Park Güell or the bunkers. They're gonna have you looking towards that sea from up top. Tibidabo is the highest point, and right there on Tibidabo, you've got Barcelona's highest accessible observation point, which is the Collserola Observation Deck, which is 288 meters above sea level or 944 feet, looking out and you can see the entire part of the city. They even say on clear days, you can see out as far as Mallorca. It is a little bit further outside of the city center and a little bit harder to get to, but it definitely gets the city points in terms of something that you can see the entire city of Barcelona from. The number of museums and galleries, according to TripAdvisor, per capita is also another one of those categories where Barcelona is definitely going to gain some points. With over 100 museums and galleries in the city, you've got your pick of all sorts of different options. I'm not going to go into too much detail here in this video because I have many different videos visiting some of those museums to help you find out if they're worth it for you, so you can check those out. But some of the best museums to take advantage of while you're here and definitely get out and see are the National Art Museum of Catalonia, which is over on Montjuïc. You've also got the Miró Museum right there as well, the Picasso Museum in the Born, the Contemporary Art Museum in the Raval, and my personal favorite, right in the heart of the Gothic quarter, the History Museum of Barcelona. Another category that was taken into account was the LGBT plus safety rankings, and Barcelona was marked in the article for being such an inclusive place. Spain as a whole in 2022 was ranked 9th out of over 200 countries that were rated in safety for gay travel. In fact, Barcelona won the best gay travel destination outside of the US in 2021. One of the other questions I get quite a bit is about the safety in Barcelona. And it's one of my favorite things about the city is how safe I feel walking around in those streets. It's not a city where you have to worry about too many bigger crimes or anything like that. One thing that you do unfortunately have to keep in mind are those pickpockets or any of those petty thefts. But what they're looking at the article specifically was the homicide rate. And that's usually based off cases per 100,000 people. The numbers that I've seen in Barcelona put it at 0.6 cases per 100,000. Another category that I don't have the full numbers on is disability access. And the Telegraph used the hotel information from kayak.com. And most of those hotels are probably going to have great access for anybody with those disabilities or trouble moving around. But when you're in any of these older European cities, there are going to be some points of access to maybe some different monuments or things that aren't as easily accessible. One of the categories that I alluded to a little bit before, and one that Barcelona definitely scored very well on, are the annual hours of sunshine. Barcelona comes in with a whopping 2,591 annual hours of sunshine, which is a stat that I had no idea about. I usually see those in terms of the number of sunny days a year, which in Barcelona, like the rest of Spain, is probably going to be around like 300 sunny days. That's one of the greatest things about the city. You don't have to worry about the rain too much. It rains something like 50, 60 days a year, not something that you have to think about all the time. You can have your sunglasses on in the middle of January. You can be outside most of those days, and you can really take advantage of the city while you're here. Now, while Barcelona did offer those 2,500 hours of sunshine a year, it came in about 1,000 short of the #1 city, which was Dubai, with over 3,500 annual hours of sunshine a year. Now, the last big categories that points were given to, and the only other category where Barcelona actually lost points, was the urban population density. Barcelona came in at 16,000 people per square kilometer. So you can see that density-wise, Barcelona is a very populated city, and that has everything to do with its layout. Because those walls were up for such a long time, that old city of Barcelona, the Ciutat Vella, is one of those places that is probably the most populated inside the entirety of the city. But Barcelona has expanded out to as far as it can go. You've got the sea on one side, the mountains on the back. You've also got two rivers on each side, the Llobregat and the Besós, and Barcelona can't get any bigger. Now, those were the main categories given out in the article for their ranking of the 50 best cities in the world, with Barcelona coming in at #1. But there were also some secondary categories that gave some bonus points to each of those cities that we're going to take a look at now. The first one is the beach, and there really isn't much more to be said. Barcelona is probably most known for having that beach right in the center of the city, right off of the Barceloneta. You've got about 4, almost 5 full kilometers of beachfront. One of the best things about those beaches is that it gives you access to the sea. And historically, my favorite thing about it is that most of those beaches are man-made. They were created for that 1992 Olympic Games. Real or fake, however you want to look at it, it gives an awesome place for the people to get over to and take advantage of, where you've got people there all day, laying out, having a great time, but also a lot of different activities like volleyball up and down any of those beaches. Points were also given to cities for having a canal system, a harbor, or a river. And while Barcelona doesn't have a canal system, it does have those 2 rivers that I mentioned before, and it also has the old harbor where you're going to see all of those yachts parked out in front, and the newer harbor where you've got all of those cruise liners coming into the city as well. As more and more cities are looking to go green, having a bike sharing or a scooter sharing system have become more and more important, and more points were given out to those cities that had those. Barcelona has all sorts of different options in terms of mopeds, scooters to get around, but it definitely has its Bici bike sharing, which makes it a lot easier to get around the city. I myself use Bici quite a bit to get from point A to point B. It's one of those things that I tell people all the time. It's not worth not having the Bici card. For about 50 euros for the entire year, you've got free rides of up to 30 minutes to get through the city of Barcelona. And most of those rides, you're going to get there in plenty of time. They've got regular bikes, and they've also got electric bikes, which get you there even faster. Having a symphony orchestra is also going to get those cities extra points. The Barcelona Symphony Orchestra, or National Orchestra of Catalonia, has its headquarters in Barcelona. It used to be over at that Catalan Music Palace that I mentioned before, which was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, where it's definitely worth getting over and seeing a concert while you're here. But they've now moved their headquarters over to l'Auditori, which is closer to Gloria's Plaza. Either way, whether it's over at that auditorium or the Catalan Music Palace, you've got all sorts of different options to catch a concert while you're here in town. The last category that gives you extra points is having a metro system that compromises more than just buses or an urban rail system. And it's one thing that I talk about a lot, and when people ask that question about how to get around in Barcelona, it's one of the big benefits within the city. One, it's incredibly well connected. You've got the metro grid that covers most places in the city, but all sorts of different trains that'll get you just outside of the city center. Most of those can all be accessed by the one zone ticket that you can get that'll not only work for the trains, the metros, the buses, the trams, but it will get you around anywhere you need to go within that zone 1. The other great thing about that public transportation is that it's incredibly cheap. So if you want to get a 10 pass to get you around the city, it's only going to cost you around 11 euros. Add all of that up and Barcelona comes in at #1 as the greatest city in the world. For dining and hotels, it's a 36 out of 50. For culture and history, it's a 31 out of 50. For outdoor activities, 35 out of 50. And for transport and getting there, 43 out of 50. Barcelona, greatest city in the world, and that's not according to me. I know you thought that I would say that if you had to ask. That's according to the science at the Telegraph. If you are coming over to Barcelona and looking to get better prepared for that next trip, watch this video next so you'll know the 10 things you need to know before getting to Barcelona.